Welcome. I'm Paul Edelson, the president of the museum, and I thank you for coming tonight. Tonight we're honoring the men who went off to war to make America safe 100 years ago in 1917, as the United States entered World War I. The museum has honored men and women, veterans, with the flag ceremony, starting with World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Now we honor the World War I veterans, an extension of a newly opened exhibit, New Jersey and the Great War, which is inside, which we will invite you to come in and see afterward. We have a couple of proclamations, and I'd like to call John Curley to come up, please.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Curley. I am Monmouth County freeholder, representing the 630,000 residents of our 53 municipalities. You know, ladies and gentlemen, when I travel about going to the Eagle Scout events, I talk about America is not in decline, because when we have the Boy Scouts of America, the Cub Scouts of America, and the Girl Scouts of America, America is on the incline. It's traveling upward. But we have 33,000 veterans in Monmouth County, and we have 5 veteran service officers in our Veteran Service Office that have brought in over $35 million to about 2,000 veterans in the past 7 years. And that's remarkable, because these individuals would not know where to start. This is a wonderful community, Ocean Township, and this museum stands out. It stands out as a beacon to all of us and to the other 52 communities of what can be done in preserving our history. Because, as the old adage goes, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And I salute Paul and the entire staff of volunteers for their hard work. I brought forth a recognition certificate on behalf of our Director, Lillian Burry, Deputy Director John Curley, Freeholder Thomas Arnone, Freeholder Serena Damaso, and Freeholder Gary Rich. This certificate is presented to the Township of Ocean Historical Museum on the occasion of the Veterans Flag Ceremony in memory of the men and women who served in the First World War. World War I originated in Europe and lasted from July 2014 to November 1918, one of the largest wars in world history. It comprised of more than 70 million military personnel. One of the deadliest conflicts in history. It was responsible for the deaths of more than 9 million combatants and 7 million civilians. The Township of Ocean Historical Museum occupies Eden Woolley House circa 1747, one of the few 18th century homes surviving in Ocean Township. And on this day, friends and members of the Township Historical Museum will gather to raise the flag in memory of those who served in the First World War. A major exhibit at the Eden Woolley House will be available to visitors interested in the role that New Jersey played in the ultimate victory of the Great War. Therefore, the Monmouth County Board of Chosen Freeholders commends the Township of Ocean Historical Museum on their excellent programming and recognition of historic events by proclaiming this day, July 29, 2017, in the archives of our history as the 100th anniversary of the World War I Flag Ceremony Day, flying here this evening. Paul, please take possession. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. We have another proclamation. I'm not going to read all of it. It's from Assemblyman Houghtaling and Assemblywoman Downey. Whereas the General Assembly of the State of New Jersey is pleased to join the Eden Woolley House, highly esteemed in the Garden State, and marking the solemn occasion of our nation's entry into World War I during a special event on July 29, 2017. I'm going to skip down to it is altogether proper and fitting for the members of this House and the people of this state to join the Eden Woolley House in saluting the memory of our state and our country's World War I veterans. Now therefore be it resolved by the General Assembly of the State of New Jersey that this House hereby honors the Eden Woolley House in recognition of the flag-raising ceremony and remembrance and commends its meritorious efforts on behalf of our veterans. And thank you very much for Assemblyman Houghtaling and Assemblywoman Downey. I would like now to bring up our guest speaker. I think many people have heard him. He's a true patriot, Mr. Lou Parisi.
In the past 241 years of our nation's history, there have been a number of pivotal events that has changed the course not only of our country, but of the world. One of these events took place on June the 28th, 1914, in the Bosnian town of Sarajevo. At that time, on that date, one of the minor leaders and one of the minor noblemen of that period, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, was assassinated. But that one act set a chain of events that eventually resulted in that great war that we are just commemorating today. And of course, we know that for 3 years, our country was able to stay aloof, stay free from the horrors of that particular war. Many of you have seen the exhibit inside and therefore are well familiar with the campaign in France and in Belgium and on the Italian front at that time. I would like to recall for you, however, some of the mood and the feelings that our country experienced from 1914 to 1917. As you know from your history books, there was a mood of America first, a mood of neutrality. There was a determination for our country to remain aloof from this war. And they were supported, of course, by not only Congress and our president, but also by the religious leaders, and especially the women of our country. In addition to that, as you can well expect, the many German Americans living in this country were certainly not eager to see us go to war. Nor were the English, of course, that were sympathetically too anxious to see us this war, although their sympathies certainly in the beginning were for Britain. But for the German Americans and the Scandinavians, and even for the Irish, after the Irish Rebellion in 1916, there was a great sympathy for Britain, for the Allies, and a determination, of course, to remain aloof, despite that reverence, that respect for the Allied cause. However, there are several events that took place that really changed the mood and swung the American people to a warlike posture. The first was in 1915, in May of 1914, when the British passenger ship, the liner Lusitania, was sunk. Aboard the ship were 136 Americans. Over 100 Americans lost their lives in that sinking. In that final January of 1916, in Jersey City, my hometown, there was the explosion of the Black Tom ammunition depot, and that too enraged Americans and swung them further to be sympathetic to the Allied cause. In that next year, in January, Germany, determined to bring an end to the war, decided that and published to the world that there would be an undiscriminate U-boat attack on all shipping, neutral as well as Allied, that attempted to reach Britain. But I think the climactic event happened just a few weeks later. I remember in grammar school it was known as the XYZ affair. Perhaps those letters are familiar to you also. But what it meant was that the British intelligence was able to intercept a communique from Arthur Zimmermann, the German foreign minister, sent to Mexico. In the letter, he indicated that he was certain that very soon America would enter the war on the part of the Allies. And therefore, he urged the Mexican government that should that event take place, and actually when it takes place, that they should join the German cause. And in tribute and in payment for their support, he guaranteed that Germany would support them not only financially, but will help them recover the territories of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona that they lost in the Mexican-American War 70 years earlier. And so we see that finally that was too much. And so a few weeks later, Wilson went before Congress and urged a declaration of war. And of course that war began, as we commemorate today, 100 years ago this year. And of course we know the effects of that war, the toll of not only of the Americans. We lost 106,000 men, and half of them, of course, were not combat casualties, but suffered from disease and the influenza. But the rest of the world, of course, as was mentioned, millions more were killed in that great war. And of course, we know that before the war ended, Wilson was aware that the possibilities of a peace that could not last. And he went before Congress, and he went before the American people, and he warned them, and he warned his allies that there could be no lasting peace if either side insisted on a victory. Unfortunately, those pleas went unheeded. And leading those in that Versailles, the armistice, as you know, was signed on November the 11th, 1918. But the peace at Versailles was not signed until June the 28th, 1919, exactly 5 years after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And of course, the peace treaty, so-called, was disastrous for Germany. Under the architecture of Lloyd George from Britain and Clemenceau of France, they insisted on the severest penalties for Germany. They were determined to crush Germany financially. And in addition, you must be aware that the other demands that Germany was forced to sign. Alsace-Lorraine was given back to France. Prussia was given to Poland. Danzig was made a free city. And the colonies that Germany had in Africa were, of course, taken over by the Allied nations. However, we are here today, of course, to commemorate those losses and to really realize that the prediction that Generalissimo Foch made, he understood the importance of a real peace and not an armistice. And he predicted prophetically that if these rules were to be, if these restrictions and demands were to be carried out, that this indeed was not a peace, but an armistice that would last just for 20 years.
Thank you very much, Lou. We're now going to have the reading of the names of the veterans by Don Bruno.
Evening, everybody. William Andrews, Henry Bennett, Lester Bennett, Clarence Bennett. Clarence gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country and the Allies. Arthur Brown, Charles Brown, Elmer Brown, Walter P. Brown, Charles Cohen, Herbert Cohen, Jerome Cohen, John J. Connors, John Conover, Norman Conover, Richard Cornell, John Dangler, Lester Dangler, Orion Davison, Earl Davison, Walter De Bruyne, Richard Duane, Harry Durand, Edward Eisel, Joseph Eisel, Harry Fay, Carlton Fisher, Emil Gardner, Walter Gardell, Charles Harvey, George Harvey, Oliver Herbert Sr., William Hibbets, Howard Jeffrey, Chester A. King, James Lake, Howard Layton, Hugh Lackey, Lawrence Leahy, Howard C. Leahy. Howard gave the ultimate sacrifice for his country in the Allies. John O'Day, Peter Page, Gaddis Plum, Henry J. Postel, Otto Richter, Edward Rice, Spencer Rogers, Harold Sachs, Harold Steiner, Frank Smith, William Talman, Albert W. Taylor, Walter Valentine, Harold Vanote, Horace Vanote, Herman Wesch, Lester G. White, Frank Woolley, Ernest Worth, Carmen Abatamarco, Army, George Beatty, Army, Dominic Bruno, Army, William S. Conklin, World War I PFC, World War II Major, Lehman Cranmer, Max Deuce, Army, Samuel Edison, Navy, James Gherkin, Army, Kingdon Gold, Army, Joe Hastings, Lofton Horner, Leroy Jeffries, Paul Johnson, John Kurgian, Ernest Lohman, Giuseppe Marinaccio, Italian Army, Wilbert Nelson, J. Carroll Noonan, Army pilot, PFC Harry Patterson, Needham Roberts, George St. Germain, Homer St. Germain, William J. Trial, Canadian Army.
Thank you very much, David. We now have flag ceremony with Troop 71. Accompanying is Marine Corporal Boyd Moore on the bagpipes. In closing, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank Lou Parisi for sharing his thoughts with us. He never turns us down whenever he's asked. He's a true American patriot. I'd also like to thank Boyd Moore for volunteering to be a bagpiper for this ceremony. We really appreciate it. And I'd also like to thank Scoutmaster Don Patterson for Troop 71. Troop 71 has done many, many ceremonies for us and two big Eagle projects. One project, we were restoring the tower in the back. They put the walkways in a couple of years ago. But a massive project they did. This 100-year-old playhouse was restored last year by Troop 71. It was completely refurbished, new, everything new, the windows done, new fences around it, and they did that project. They do a lot of Eagle projects, and they do big projects. So I want to congratulate them for a wonderful job, and they've always been very supportive of the museum. And I'd like to thank everybody participating here, everybody as a volunteer that does that. Please come inside and see the exhibit on World War I, and we have refreshments inside. And thank you again for coming. And let's.